Hello, everybody. I'm Hans Engel from the Directors Guild of Canada, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to DGC's All Art series, where we celebrate some of the most important production designers and get into the weeds of their process. With me off the top is celebrated DGC production designer and national designer rep, Marion Wehag. Over to you, Marion.
Thanks, Hans. As Hans said, I'm the National Art Department rep for the Directors Guild of Canada, and I'm really pleased to welcome you tonight to our second All Art event of 2022. It's called Production Designers Talk Shop, The Creative Process. I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to all of our panelists, drawn from several regions across the country with rich collective experience and expertise across many genres and skills of production. They're generously giving their time to us this evening to offer their insights, while the wonderful Tamara Deverell helps guide the conversation. I'd also like to thank the National DGC staff for helping facilitate this webinar, and also you, our attendees. It's your interest and your enthusiasm that has helped foster these all art events. And to that end, we'll be having two more through the course of this year, so stay tuned for that information. Before getting started, I offer this brief and important message. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional Indigenous lands that we all live and gather on today. Although this event is online, we are all located on traditional ancestral Indigenous lands. In Toronto, I acknowledge the land I am on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to the Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands and waters for thousands of years. But many of us have come as settlers, immigrants, and newcomers in this generation and in generations past. We also acknowledge those who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Now, without further delay, I'll hand this back to our host with the most, Hans Engel. And thanks again for being here tonight with us, and let's talk shop.
Thank you so much, Marion. We are extremely fortunate to have the guests that we do have with us tonight. Our moderator tonight is the renowned Academy Award nominated designer Tamara Deverell. We were listening to some of the music from Nightmare Alley as you were coming in. She is our moderator tonight. Tamara has over 30 years experience in the film and television business. Her most recent film, Nightmare Alley, directed by frequent collaborator Guillermo del Toro, was nominated for both the Oscar and BAFTA for design and won the Art Directors Guild of America award. Tamara also had the pleasure of working on Star Trek Discovery and Incorporated, which is the futuristic thriller produced by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Prior to that, Tamara designed the pilot and 4 seasons of The Strain, again, a Guillermo del Toro project with Carlton Cruz. Other acclaimed films and filmmakers she's worked with include Deepa Mehta on Bollywood Hollywood, and with Michael McGowan on Score, a hockey musical, which was the opening night film at TIFF 2010, as well as the critically acclaimed and seriously tugging at your heartstrings movie, award-winning Still Mine. An amazing body of work, and I can't list it all. It's really quite amazing. Real privilege to have you here, Tamara. We have 4 featured guests tonight, the sum of which cover a vast array of productions, including indie features, Canadian series, big budget US series, and large features. Our first is DGC Award nominated Zazu Myers. She has many distinct films to her name, including the recently acclaimed award-winning film by Dennis Goulet, Night Raiders, The Broken Hearts Gallery, Semi Chellis's American Woman, Miranda de Poncier's The Grizzlies, and Patricia Rosema's remarkable film Mouthpiece, among others. She was also the designer of the recent Kate Beckinsale series Guilty Party. Liz Bischoff has distinguished herself in the television world on shows such as Rising Suns, Hello Again, and most recently on the hit show Son of a Critch, which I had the pleasure of honoring in St. John's not too long ago. It's an amazing show. Multi-award winning designer John Blackie's most recent big show was Showtime's The Good Lord Bird, and his credits also include Damnation, Tin Star, Hell on Wheels, Fargo, and Copper. Again, with too long a career and too many credits to list, I feel compelled to mention two early classic collaborations with great director Ann Wheeler, two of my personal favorites, Cowboys Don't Cry and Bye Bye Blues. Really amazing, amazing films. And finally, to round out this incredible panel, Emmy-nominated and multi-award-winning designer François Séguin has designed some of the most distinctive films out of Quebec, including The Red Violin, The Barbarian Invasions, Silk, Hochelaga, Land of Souls, and The Song of Names, as well as such big Hollywood films as Brooklyn, The Mortal Instrument, City of Bones, and The Karate Kid, just to name a few. Please welcome Tamara Deverell, Zazu Myers, Liz Bischoff, John Blackie, and François Séguin. Come on in, everybody. We like to add a little bit of the live feeling to these things when we can. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before I hand it over, I'd like to point out to those attending the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's where you can type questions in to the group throughout the session. Tamara will be watching for your questions and we'll try to get to as many as she possibly can. She may not get to all of them, but she will try. Really looking forward to this, everyone. Over to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Hans. Oh, and you've gone. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the rocky start. I had some technical problems, you guys. So what else is new? Francois, I've known you for so many years. You're muted. You're still muted. I can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Okay.
I just want to share with everybody here that Francois was really the first production designer that I ever had the opportunity to work with, and was my mentor, and I thank him for that. And really, you know, huh?
We were a neighbor, right?
We were neighbors, and
Yeah.
I worked with you for a couple of years. And when I first met you, I tried to speak French. My French was horrible coming from Vancouver. Je m'excuse après toutes ces années.
Okay.
John, I haven't seen you for a bit, but fond remembrances of walking through your copper sets and being so impressed. Zazu, so nice to see you, friend of my daughter's, and nice to see you always in our backyard, and nice to see the work you've been doing. Liz, we have not met, but I'm actually in Cape Breton now, so we're kind of neighbors.
Hi, yeah.
Yeah, you're. I take it you're in St. John's right now.
No, I'm not. I'm in Toronto.
Oh.
So here, I'm heading out there in July.
Oh, in July to do more of the same.
The second
series.
season, yeah.
Exciting. Okay. I thought I'd start this off because I think we're supposed to talk about the creative process. That's kind of our mandate. So I found a quote that I thought was interesting, and I thought I'd just throw it out there. I'm not going to say who it's by until I finish. To quote, "Nothing is a from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversations, architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light, and shadows. Select only things to steal that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and your theft will be authentic. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent. And don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it if you feel like it. In any case, always remember what Jean-Luc Godard said. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to." And that is Jim Jarmusch. Anyways, I thought it was an interesting thought because, you know, one of the things I was going to ask was what, you know, in a world so full of the internet and ideas and feels like everything's been done, where do we look to and what tools do we use to inspire and to inform and to create? So I'm going to ask that for like the grand poobah here. I'm going to put that out to Francois.
It, in the beginning of every show I work or story that I have to tell, one of my first thing is never look at movie. I don't want to see, I even made this movie called Karate Kid. I never saw it. By
Right.
principle, I take this thing as a new thing, and it doesn't matter what happened before.
Right. So is that if it's a remake or
Any
Or
movie, any
movie.
movie. I work. I don't know. I work on Borgia. I didn't want it. I've seen movie about this period, the early Renaissance and the painter. But when I started working, I didn't want to see movie. I read book. I read the life of Michelangelo,
right?
Raphael. All this is for me. It was fine, but I didn't want to see a movie about it.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's it really it takes you out of your own process, I think, and certainly on Nightmare Alley, I get to talk a bit about my stuff.
Yeah.
we it was a remake, and one of the first things Guillermo said to all of us, all his department heads, is watch the movie, but then forget about the whole thing. Watch the old movie and then forget about it. And that's exactly what we all did, because there was too much into it. And we looked at paintings, and we looked at photography of the Depression
And
era and all
bring
that kind
back
of
the
stuff.
movie where it's from, and
Yeah.
try to do your own inquiry about what it is. I read, like on Borgia, I read about Michelangelo, a little story about those guys. There's one, Vasari, it's a main thing. I didn't read it all because it's like 2,000 pages, and when you're working a movie, it's you don't have much, not a movie or a TV series, especially, you don't have time to read the whole thing.
Right.
So you have like 26 books in front of you, and you go skim your information that you need. And because first of all, the script by itself has new demand.
Yeah.
Technically to new demand, especially when you start working on TV series, which is another, with a new director every 2 weeks, it's another ball game, right?
Yeah.
Not like a finished story, when you start even the third episode, it's not written. So
Yeah.
but every time I work on movie, I try to go back to visual, painter, story, novel, but not in movie.
Cool.
I
Liz,
think
what
it's
about-
too much. It's too much. And I
Yeah.
work with director who keep quoting,
Yeah.
oh, let's do like Antonioni when she walks in the room. And for me, it's.
Well, that's very part and parcel of the Jim Jarmusch quote that nothing is original. At least if you don't look at what's there as much, or willfully steal it, then it becomes
I
original.
remember one director who refused a location because he had this thing that from a movie, the door would open this way because it was a quote from, I don't know, Pasolini, and it didn't work because the door was opening the wrong way. And you say, please give me
Let it go.
Great.
Liz, what about you? At the, you're younger, you're working on mostly television right now. You've done some short films. What's your process? What's your creative
I think
launch pad?
it depends on the show for me. I mean, the show that I'm working on now it's a Disney show about hip hop, which I knew nothing about. Was totally not my genre of music. So I spent about a week watching hip hop music videos until I understood and got the vibe of what the kind of fun of it, or I just sort of had to do a crash course of hip hop to learn it and figure it out, and then find the elements that appeal to me. So your quote for me really worked, because I mean I looked at everything and I found the sort of the period of hip hop that was the fun stuff, the color stuff, the stuff that could work for Disney, that isn't too, too, I don't know, too tough, no guns, no, none of that sort of stuff, because it's definitely a kid's movie. Yeah, so I mean, in that case, that's my process for this one, but like for another one, it just depends, like on what I latch to until I find the hook of what I'm trying to say. Like it might be more books, it might be films, it might be just anything. It's just everything, I guess. So that's
Interesting. And Zazie, what about you? Just tell us about your creative process, really.
Yeah,
When you start a project,
yeah, when it comes to coming up with visual ideas and visual references and things like that, it's like, I think there's two approaches, and the one is, of course, like that sort of external approach of especially if you're doing a period piece or something like that, or a universe that you're not familiar with, be it like something fantasy or something, like a community that you're not familiar with, then obviously photographic reference is like just like the most key useful thing. So definitely photography. But I think also that seems to be like, I think everyone's going to have that to some degree as an answer. But the other thing I think is just like looking inward to the script and trying to figure out like what is already there that you can kind of pull out and like magnify, I think. So like, which can work in a lot of different scales of things. I tend to do stuff like, or gravitate towards projects that are sort of abstract or have some kind of weird, like unreality about them in some way. And that can kind of allow for a little license on that front, I think. And so like, especially, so part of that is sort of like building the overarching world. And then the other part is trying to find like, maybe is there like a leitmotif that wants to be threaded through the project? Or is there some kind of like, what if you could sum up the themes of the film in a frame, like how can we create an image that's going to be iconic in that way, that'll especially even if you're doing something that's like really low budget, I've kind of had a range of stuff, but primarily I do sort of independent features, and and sometimes like there's a very complicated one I did recently that I'll get into later, but like something really simple would be like this movie Mouthpiece had two actresses simultaneously playing the same character. So they're both playing the main character at the same time. You see both of them generally in the frames. And like eventually, we were trying to figure out like there's so many themes of femininity and like and mother-daughter relationships and the multiple voices that go on inside your head. And throughout the process, we ended up coming up with this sort of use of reflections throughout the film to like multiply them even more, which is sort of, it's like mirrors. Obviously, it seems so obvious once when you like hit that thing. It's like it can.
And is this something you're in discussion with the director coming to making this? I know it seems simple, but those are those are key elements sometimes to putting together something creative.
Totally, so, yeah. It's always like, I mean, for me, it's always like talking with the director and the DP, and just like that kind of trio is so like, if you're all on the same page, and usually like I've had the good fortune to like generally really be on the same page with the directors and DPs that I've worked with, but then you can kind of like hash out these things and kind of throw stuff at the wall and look at images together. And I mean, in that case as well, it was like, okay, well, we ended up putting mirrors in places that, to create multiple reflections, but also using like beveled glass everywhere so that the DP had the opportunity to shoot kind of through foreground beveled glass and then fracture the person in two. You know, so I don't know, it's like that, but that's not, you know, that wasn't really from photography. It was just like already there in the script, and we didn't really, you didn't see it until you like just go back to that material and think about the themes and try to figure out what kind of imagery is going to connect with the themes. So
Interesting. John, I'm going to just same kind of question, but just tell us more sort of logistically, what are you, when you get a script and you show whatever it is, what are your first steps? You've got this script. What's your process?
Well, I try to open my mind to the script and just take it, like be an open vessel, basically. Hear what it has to say, try to identify the kernels of the scenes, you know, what is the most important parts of all these things. And then I, depending on where you're shooting, where in the world you're shooting, you start to take, at least I take kind of an inventory of the assets that are available, whether it's people, landscapes, you know, available buildings that suit your purposes, what kind of furniture is around, you know, all that kind of stuff. Just take an inventory. It's kind of like doing a jigsaw puzzle, right? Turn all the pieces up so you can see all the colors and all the stuff that's available to you before you start solving the problem. And once I've got that sort of aced, then I start sort of it's pretty mechanical, actually. How do I make each of these things work? Can this be this and that be that? You know, can you make the back door on this? You know, if you're in a place that has no castles and there's 6 castles in there, you're going to have a whole different approach to the solution. And basically, that's what I try to identify. It's just the pluses and the shortfalls of being able to deliver the script, even to the point of maybe going back to the writer and the director and just say, you know, we found this great place that, you know, is going to work perfectly for us. This scene would really come to life there. This is how we would change it up, blah, 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 and then move forward, you know, and then one piece at a time, try to stand up all of those things to be strong, and then try to knit them, you know, through that whole process, trying to knit them all together in some kind of cohesive string. You know, you're trying to build a symphony. That's the way I go. Yeah,
that sounds great. It's interesting. You mentioned 6 castles, and I'm going, well, what show is that? And were you shooting that like in downtown Toronto, or somewhere in Calgary?
No, it was. I think it'd be in Newfoundland.
In Newfoundland, there's lots of castles there.
Tons, yeah.
I see there's questions. How do I do this on my iPad? Sorry. Let me ask you, Francois, have you ever been in a situation where you've come, just from what John was saying, where you've changed the script with an idea that you've brought to the writers of either a place or a set that you felt was what, you know, you were able to build, or just to tweak the character or something story-wise that came from in relationship to?
I'm pretty sure I did. It's not that if you install a good relationship with the director and the DP, it depends. Sometimes you find a better ally with the DP, sometimes with the director. But yeah, it happens very often on the script, you know, because there's technical stuff, there's schedule stuff, there's as John was saying, you have a puzzle, you know, you have the main location, but I don't know, on Song of Name in Budapest, we had the main location, but you need 2 more, and it's supposed to be England in 1938. In Budapest, you know, you have to be kind of beg, say, don't, please help us, you know. But it happened usually in the good situation. It's resolved with elegance, and everybody slap their shoulder and everybody's happy. But it happened very often that, like John said, please, I found this, it's not exactly what you were thinking in the script, but maybe we're gonna move on. And yeah, it's a part of it. At one point, the artist for me, on my drafting table and my watercolor, but at one point you get back to the real world and you have to, that's the fun, really the fun of it too. At the same time, you don't want to be just fighting for your world. It's you fighting for a movie, so you're fighting for tell a story. So sometimes you let it go and you try to bring it back later, and it's always, but it's fun. That's why we're doing it, right?
Yeah, no, totally. There's a question. Thank you, Francois. There's a question in the Q&A of somebody's asking about, how do you need a formal education in art to get started in the art department? And if you want to start as an art PA, how do you get the experience in a portfolio? Which I know a lot of people, especially younger people who are listening, hopefully, are curious about our various beginnings. I started to do, that was my beginning. I did sculpture.
I just missed that. I don't know. Did
Yeah,
anybody
me
else?
too.
We didn't hear your beginning.
Yeah.
5 seconds there.
Came
Yeah.
back.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, for myself, I started in art school at Capilano University in North Vancouver and at Emily Carr, and I studied a bit of everything. And I really didn't know what I wanted to be in the arts. I knew that. I studied photography, painting, sculpture, printmaking, you name it, I was there. And, it wasn't until my father said, maybe in film you can find a career, because those people seem to do a bit of everything like you. So that was kind of my beginning. What about you, Liz? How did you get, did you study? What did you do to get started?
I actually started apprenticing as a props maker when I was about 15 or 16 for live theater in Toronto. And then I went to National Theatre School. And then after that, I had traveled around a lot. And then I ended up in Amsterdam, where I studied experimental film. And I don't know, that was not very useful, but very interesting and super fun. And then, so the combination of so I did a lot of prop work before. And so it's all just a combination of that stuff, plus the art, plus the experimental film.
Right. And Francois, did you go to the National Theatre School too?
Theater school.
No, you did go. And what about you, Zazu? Did you?
Yeah, I started. First, after high school, I went to University of Toronto, and I was taking art history there and cinema studies. And then, but I got kind of frustrated at not making anything. And that's what I had no idea that film school was even a thing, or that there was a film industry in Toronto when I started university. And so then, then I found out about the film program at Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan. So I ended up going there, transferring, and doing an undergrad there in film studies, in film.
Yeah.
Me, I want to go to film school, but there was none. So I went to theater, was the closest thing that I could find.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, sorry, Tamara.
Sorry,
we lost you
Tamara,
again.
we lost you again.
Oh, gone.
No, she's not muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was just saying, there really isn't a specific place that I know of where you study production design for film. The National Theatre School was always the closest. John, what was your experience?
You can at just for those at Ryerson, they do have a specialization now.
Yes.
in
Yeah.
design, which they don't have at York. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But this,
That's true,
for,
that's true.
For me, it was 50 years ago.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Just to I'm proud.
It's still a good place to go, though.
Yeah,
John, what was your experience studying and so on?
I did the Alberta College of Art and Design painting and sculpture for a while, and then worked in public television, which was a great learning place. And yeah, I think everybody, you find your own path. I think there's nothing better than doing the job or getting close to the job to understand the job. My
Cool.
art director worked for me when he was 15 years old as just a day guy that helped to finish a set sort of on a Sunday with his dad, and he's still with me today, 35 or 40 years later, right?
There you go. There's some really cool questions coming in. So I'm gonna just, I'm not sure, Hans, I'm just gonna answer live. During your initial talks with the directors, so this is coming from somebody out in the audience, during your initial talks with the director, do less visual inspirations like the music of a particular composer ever enter the conversation and inspire the tone of the design? Like less visual, so music, dance movement, I don't know. Zazu?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, not always, but like I've had good experiences with, especially the last feature that I did. The directors put together like a Spotify playlist essentially and sent it to us, which was great, just to kind of get the mood and the spirit of the thing, and yeah, good to kind of get a bit of flavor and tone for sure. Yeah.
Anybody else use music?
Well, I mean, this show that I'm doing is a musical, so I mean, yeah, the music videos are hugely important just to hear all the hip hop, to the spirit of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you can listen to that stuff on Nightmare Alley. I was listening to all the music that was actually in the script because Guillermo had listed songs. So all these old 30s and 40s songs were, I just play them in my office, and it was great inspiration. It just put me in the right mood. Made me want to bite my hand off. But here's another question. I like these questions from the audience. They're great. I'm going to put this out to you, Liz. Do you usually bring costumes or wardrobe, DP, director, and our art department to establish colors? I've seen costumes and DPs conflicted by colors chosen. I wonder if any of you have established wall treatments, curtains, colors in general with those departments, as it impacts them so much. Is that something you try to establish right from the beginning, Liz?
Yes. It depends on the show and what we're trying to establish. Certainly for Critch, everything was very specific in terms of what wallpaper I was using, what kind of floor treatments I was using, what kind of curtains I could get. Like I had a pretty clear idea in my head, and I put those all into my mood book straight away, just to try to put out the tone of what I was going to create. And colors, I had all the colors kind of thought about, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And John, what's your process working between costumes and cinematographers? And I know we can always kind of get trapped with the color palette. What do you?
It's sort of the Vulcan mind meld, right? You want to get everybody in synchronization, and part of that is through socially, just communicating all the time, going back and forth between all those departments. Like a DOP and I have to be totally in sync. Wardrobe, I try to be aware of everything that's happening there without being a busybody. I don't make any comments on style unless we're at cross purposes. But sometimes somebody else picks the costumes, not the costume designer, and so I have to be a little light on my feet because I don't want anything to just melt into the background.
Yeah.
Wardrobe to me is a key thing because it's foreground and it's on an actor, and good acting and good wardrobe hides a lot of bad scenery.
Mm-hmm. And Francois, what about you? You do a lot of color studies, I know, in watercolor and so on, to really inform the color palette. How do you work with a costume designer, with your strong color sense?
We sit down roughly, we sit down and sometimes that we have some, if, when the time permit, we have, the costume designer would say, we have a big fitting, look, and we go there and we discuss, I see what's happening and I'm trying to answer or guide, depending. I'm not, the term production designer, it's, in the 50s, it was, the guy would do everything, because they were mostly guy.
This is true.
Yeah. And then because you know where it's from, right? It's a production designer because in the 40 and 50s, there was guy production design, art director, they would do many movies for one studio. They would do this one, this at the same time. So because it was all the actor, those guys who were basically part of the administration of the studio became production designer because they were working on 3 movies at the same time. Cedric, what's his name?
Gibbons.
Hey?
Cedric Gibbons.
Yeah, he would do 4
Yeah.
movies at the same time. So he,
Yeah.
honestly, because we've been doing movie, imagine doing 5 at the same times.
I can't. No.
No, so he was.
Except for doing an anthology series that I just finished, which was 8 movies at the same time.
Yeah, so, usually the costume designer has a contact with the actor. She knows more about this and the period. So we try to play the game at the same time. If you have a good relation, usually at the time, you just exchange and you say, okay, I will correct. And the next thing, she said, I will correct. We with the director. So in the best moment, that's what it is.
Mhm.
The bad one, we don't want to talk about.
No. Okay, I want to switch it up a bit. Zazu, what things, and they don't have to be, directly in film, what things in your life do you find most inspirational that help you in your career? Like, is it baking sourdough, or is it, what just turns your mind creatively?
That's a good question. I mean, traveling definitely, for sure. I think, yeah, like I love traveling. I love looking at new places and different ways that different people live. I think that would definitely be the primary thing. But the other thing that more recently has come into my life is gardening, which I'm really enjoying. But it doesn't really feed into my exactly, yeah. Well, you've got my favorite garden in the city. It's so lovely. But it's which doesn't really feed into the production design process yet for me, but more so the other way around, I think. And it's
Right.
also just like, it's the thing that I can design that has nothing to do with work.
Yeah,
Anyway.
right. I noticed.
So, yeah.
I have to be honest. I was Googling you all before this. I was like, okay, I know some of you. I know a bit of your work, and I was Googling John Blackie, and I got to a website, and I was like, oh, is this the same John Blackie of Glassworks? And that is the same John. And I thought, wow, when does this guy have time to do all this beautiful glass work? So if you guys want to Google. So John, how does that help you creatively? I also see you have like a million guitars and mandolins and ukuleles.
I think it's sanity in a big way. There's a little place in your mind that you have to keep, that is just your colors, just your things, just your sounds, just your, we're such a, I used to always say, it's going to take a lot of turd polish to make this work, this on a picture, because sometimes you are a turd polisher, right? But you need to keep something to yourself to keep that creativity alive, so that when you're on those productions that are not feeding you, which, they can be more draining than inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have that place in however you find it, in the garden, in the glass. I like the fire. It's good.
Yeah, that's cool. And you play music, you've got to play some of those instruments hanging behind you too. Let's see, are there any, I'm going back to the question, the questions from the audience. Are there ever any artists that you constantly visit or revisit as inspiration, no matter the project? That's an interesting question. Francois, is there any
I'm
artist
thinking,
or
give me a break, give me a moment.
anybody else? Well, Francois thinks it'll come to him. It's a tough one because, like, I was, you know, I've been looking at a lot of paintings, and you know, as much as I might not like the man, I always look at Picasso because he had all these different color periods. You know, he had the blue period, he had the rose period, he had those, you know, his abstractions. He, you know,
But
his
I
younger
don't-
paintings.
For me, thinking about it, I don't think I have a one that always go. I think every project it's called from something else. I must have my own style, whatever reading of the thing, but thinking, because maybe in the last 20 years I did a lot of period thing. So it's difficult, you know, I did that I didn't went further than the 14th century, but 14th century to 2050. So
Right.
it's I don't have one guy or person or style that I go,
Right.
but I like architecture, so I'm very, sometimes just for the way the plane work and the light, but it doesn't apply to every movie. If you have a movie about farmer and, you know, he's milking the cow, whatever you know about Invendero doesn't matter, right?
We really have to imagine all those worlds. You got to be that farmer with the cow just as much as you're the
But
cow.
what I like, it's when I scout or do prep, is to talk to farmer, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, for me, scouting way in advance. It happened to me, like I've been 2 months in China or 2 months in Japan, just with 2 Japanese guy in a car or Chinese, and I end up in village and factory. And for me, that is my best memory of all my work.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. There's some questions, I'm just gonna kind of translate them about, you know, about all the new technology. And one of my questions was, how has technology changed for us, and how is it changing, and how has it evolved, and how would you like to see it evolve? And some of the audience are asking about, you know, VFX and CGI in production, and the responsibility in the relationship with the production designer and visual effects. And I mean, from my end, I think, I'll speak personally, you know, as a production designer, I feel like I really should be in charge of all the visuals, including the VFX. And certainly when I did Star Trek, which is a vast machine, I struggled with that because there was already so much lore and design already put in place. So I think even if it's a small show or whatever it is, I think, you know, we have a responsibility to the look of the film overall. And like, if you look at Dune, that our friend Patrice has won the Academy Award for, you know, there's a lot of VFX in that, and people are saying, well, why did he win the Academy Award? There's so many VFX. And I'm like, well, he's designing those, even though he's not actually building them. So just if you guys want to talk about that a bit, Zazu, what's your feelings about the future of the interplay between VFX and production design?
Well, you know, it's funny. I kind of haven't done a ton of stuff with a lot of overlap there. I think like Night Raiders definitely did, and that I was very involved in. But we had concept art developed for. It was like there was sort of concept art in development that like for the most part just kind of like went out the window because, you know, the reality really came down to what our locations were and how we were going to kind of like puzzle pieces together with, you know, what we had available with just with the, you know, ambitions of the show and the limitations of the budget. And with that, we, you know, fortunately, the VFX elements in that, for the most part, were dictated by the props. So, you know, we had drones. There's like, you know, 50 drones, kind of swarms of drones in the sky during this film. But we had actually built a practical drone. So it just like, it, you know, it kind of dictated to VFX what that was going to be. And similarly, yeah, with some sort of wall set extensions and things like that. I mean, now you're actually making me think I've got to make a little phone call and get in touch with the production I just finished too. I think what can be tricky is just the production timeline and like how, you know, for me, most recently, you know, just finished this movie where that does have a like kind of big VFX component to it. And I've given them material to work from for that. But, you know, I finish the job and then they continue working on it afterwards. And so I think, making sure to negotiate some, you know, some non-consecutive time to check in with those people as that's going along is nothing to do for sure.
Yeah, that seems to be like some involvement in post, which you know, I've been fortunate with working with Guillermo because I'm so involved with Dennis, the VFX is right there because that's the way Guillermo works. But I just, as I said on Star Trek, it was very uncomfortable for me to feel like I couldn't visualize the sets, the interior of the sets that had related to these exterior ships that I was designing and know that design was going to carry through. John, what are your thoughts? Because you've done some bigger VFX related things.
I have always been a part of the choir that sings the praises of technology, and in doing my job, we use drones everywhere. We use 3D modeling everywhere. We are from the very beginning involved with the visual effects elements because we have it all done beforehand, right? So the door is the same size on the model as it is in real life. All those things, the windows are in the same places, all the elements. You can do a storyboard, really an animated storyboard for the director with that, you know, when it's necessary. Easy to communicate over Zoom. My department has been paperless for 10 years for sure, 100% paperless. And I love it.
Francois's like, no, I will not give up those watercolors. I understand, Francois. I'll tell you, my iPad has become my new watercolor pad because I still hand draw, but now it's all digital with the stylus. And
no, this I understand, but you know, when it's the good time and we have you know, scene designer with computer, like when I did this TV series called called Carnival Row, there were 5 of them, so full time. So I would do all my little watercolors, sit next to them every morning. I had like a 2 or 3 hour of sitting with each one, and they were amazing. But for me to think, I need this thing. That's how I think. I put a piece of paper and I start doodling, and something happened, and the color and the thing, and after that, there's people who know much more than me on computer, and so far it's been. And to go back to the CGI, it's true. It's always in a way your relationship with the director who will give you some room.
Yeah.
If it's a TV series, it's gone. It's, you know.
Yeah.
you finish and it's like huge thing and there's 4 directors, 6 directors. So but if you have a good relationship with, I remember with Denis Arcand, and I proposed at the end of its movie, we would, there was a bowl on the table with peach. I said, why don't we switch it to Cézanne painting? It was very emotional thing, and so we said, go ahead. So I sat down with for 2 weeks with the CGI where they moved the app, it was Apple, and they moved. So I had the painting. When we shot, I had the painting of Cézanne, and we finally, and Denis said, go ahead, do it.
Beautiful.
So it's all, with François Girard, he always consult me with the CGI, he send me thing, and we sit down and we correct, but other director, they just gone, right? You're gone and you're doing something else, but you're not, your contract doesn't give you the room. It's the director who will give you the room.
Yeah, it's a good director is hard to find. Liz,
yes.
what about your experience with directors? Like, do you have those ones that you creatively totally sync with, or like, how do you, I know you've done a bunch of different things, but talk
I'm
about
going to
that.
throw, like, I seem to be talking a lot about this one. I'm pretty excited about it, I guess. This is the first time the director that I'm working with right now and the DP I'm working with right now are so amazing. We've had so much time together because the DP started at the same time I did, which is almost unheard of. Anyway, and we did everything together. We shot list together, which was a really interesting process for me. I've not done that before, where we all kind of spitballed together about how the shots would look at everything, just everything from like how we dealt with color, how we dealt with everything. Just that whole process from the very beginning was just so nice, that to have all that, the luxury of time with them, that was just really great. So it's been a really lovely creative experience to do this one. And for the other, like for Critch, for instance, again, it's a television series. Yes, lots of directors, lots of different styles in there. Yeah, I guess. Go ahead.
Sometimes it feels on a TV series, I was going to say, sometimes it feels like you're just dealing with personalities. Like you have to be a very good social manipulator to deal with all the different directors.
There's a lot of politics, yes, I guess. A lot of egos. But I don't know, like in Critch, for instance, we had 2 showrunners who were so amazing and so open to everything. And they were really like so easy. They just, which is also a very comfortable experience, actually, where, they were literally saying to me, like, Liz, if you have a pitch, we're just going to step out of your way. So go for it, which was just really nice. So I felt like I had a lot of freedom to be really creative and to just do really fun things.
Yeah, it sounds like freedom and respect, which I think on a TV series, you get that from the showrunners more than the directors. The directors are hired guns, but the showrunners are the ones who really are your strength and backbone and support system. John, what do you look for when you're working creatively with a director? Like, what makes you happy? What kind of director do you like to work with? Without naming names, or the ones you don't.
I don't know, because it's always a surprise to me. There's such, it's a spectrum, and I've worked with, in my later years, with directors that turned 30 on the show we're working on, that were brilliant, and women that have been unbelievably great directors. It's just, you just never know. So it's sort of the synchronization and the trying to get on the same page with somebody else and share a combined vision. I actually love that relationship, just of the shared mind, trying to dig through the weeds to find the real jewels and put them together as often as possible. It's a, the greatest collaborative art form is filmmaking, really. And it's a beautiful thing, really. Can't get better than that.
Yeah, no, that's true. Zazu, what, let's change it up a bit. She's thinking about all her thoughts about directors, but I'm gonna change it up. Tell us a story.
If I could say one thing about just on that
Sure.
front as well.
Yeah.
I think like because I agree with what John's saying, and I think also sometimes sometimes directors can also just be like a portal to a community that you don't really know anything about. Like there's a reason that they're usually attached to a project, and like on the one hand, usually you're hired because you guys get along. Like that interview process is like it's that first date kind of situation, and you generally have a good sense of if it's going to click. But then also I really found like I've found particularly with working with directors that come from cultural backgrounds that are different than mine, sort of like it's just this like key that unlocks like this whole community that you don't know anything about, and can really help inform your the work that you do to creating spaces for characters that are from that community. So
I think, Zazu, you've been very lucky you've been very selective in your career with the types of shows you've done. Are there any directors, again, you don't have to name names, that you just have clashed with, that you just could not see eye to eye with, or have any creative connection? And how did you deal with that, if so?
I mean, I think I kind of I think I had the good misfortune of doing a project early in my career that was like such a misfire that like it really made me very it made me selective. Like that's why really you get scarred early, and then you sort of I think like partially, not necessarily it's a personality thing, but usually just like an approach that's different, or like definitely good people just if you're just like your taste is just like so different, or when the production's budget and what they're trying to do are not in line with each other, that's actually the thing with the most conflict. I think usually like or just being on.
I see Liz is nodding.
Money. Yeah,
I think that's a general
Do that too.
thread through
Yeah.
everything.
I think
Doesn't matter.
the one kind of argument that's coming to mind was a situation. I think this was like a very low budget production, and again, this is like the first. I was like right out of school, one of the first things I did, and like I managed to negotiate a location for us that was beautiful for $500. $500. I was like, they're going to be so happy. This is like the cheapest possible option for this, and it looks amazing. And they were like, why would you spend $500 on a location? I was like, oh my god, like what is happening? Just felt completely insane.
You do locate, and they're saving money on the location manager too, because you were doing that job.
Location manager, yeah, exactly. It was like it was a phone call that I made that like worked out, and like, oh my god, yeah. So I think other than that, it's usually you just want to be heard, at least, even if you guys are disagreeing with each other, and know that the other person also needs to be heard and like take in what they're trying to say. I think whenever you get notes that you're like, oh, that doesn't fit into my whole plan, like, or that sounds tacky, or I don't like the whatever, you just kind of like trying to not react immediately, and maybe think about it and take it and sit with it for a while and try and figure out how it could, because sometimes that note can then like actually open things and bring you to a new note, make you notice something about what they're trying to do that you didn't realize before. So I think yeah, that's sort of
Cool.
approach to avoid those situations. for me.
I think I agree with you in that when you get a note to just sit on it a little bit, because it just, there just is some process there that does happen. I totally understand that. Yeah. I agree
Yeah.
with-
Step back. Don't say
Like, oh, but I
anything.
have all the puzzle
I-
pieces, they're all together and I don't have any money left and like I don't have time for another, you know, peanut on top of another straw on the camel's back, then yeah, you just gotta.
Yeah.
Step back, take
Chill out.
time. I learned that from Carol Spear. She would sit in meetings when I was art directing with her, and she'd be, I hope, Carol, if you're there, I hope you're listening. She would say nothing, and then until everybody had said everything, went rah, 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 and then Carol would say something and it just solved everything and made sense because she was the one sitting there quietly. And now I don't follow her lead, but as a production designer, I try because Carol's such a good designer. Anyways, okay, we'll do speed questions because I think we're coming to the end. Most challenging project and favorite project or set. John, go.
Most challenging, I would say, was Billy the Kid, the series that I did last year. Always the last one, right?
Right, because of technology.
Favorites, I knew when we did it, Bye Bye Blues was one of my favorite movies because of the
Yeah.
experience and the shared experience with my pal. And that's
Great.
it.
Okay, Francois, most challenging project and your most favorite, the one that still tugs at your heartstrings.
Hola, hola, hola. One is boat. It's a
That's
movie
good.
called-
One answer.
One, it's a boat. It's Leolo. that I
Ah,
did when I was a kid. It was so tough, but it was so amazing.
beautiful film. If
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
hasn't seen it, you got to see that
It
film.
was
man.
so intense doing it.
And classique.
He cried. The director came to my room and said, "You fucking fired." He started crying, and it was, ooh. Sadly, he died, but he was an amazing filmmaker. Amazing filmmaker.
Okay, I got to watch it again.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Liz, what about you? Most challenging and your most favorite?
Um,
They don't have to be the same.
So I have a feature that's coming out in a month called One Up, where the main star character couldn't get a work visa. So they just with COVID and the work visas, and so we were just shooting around this everything we could possibly shoot, and in the end they never got a work visa, and we had to send everything down to Buffalo for the last 4 days of shooting, and we had a body double and like all this. It was just a kind of crazy, like you just didn't know if they just kept saying like, oh, she'll be here in 2 days, in 3 days, in 2 days, in 3. So everything just went, I mean, partially with COVID and partially with just the craziness of this immigration story. Yeah, that was a challenging, a very, very challenging one. And I think my favorite at this point is Critch, because everybody is so kind and lovely working in Newfoundland. It's just such a lovely environment, and everybody works together. And yeah, I just, I can't say enough about how nice everybody is.
Yeah, the East Coast, man, they got niceness down. Zazie, what about you? Most challenging and most creatively fulfilling?
I mean, there's like a 10-way tie for most challenging. Yeah, hard to say. Either Night Raiders for sure was super challenging. Our locations we kept having locations issues, but the most challenging would have been A Translator, which is a movie that I made in Cuba, where there's one prop house that's run by the government and there's no stores. So it was sort of really challenging, but also really like a wonderful experience at the same time, because like the not having any stores really meant that we ended up that eventually I connected with like a wonderful buyer there who just took me to people's houses in Cuba. Like just we'd go into these like old ladies' stunning apartments in these like melting kind of, colonial mansions that were completely full of mold. And like everything was, from the 50s or the 80s. And, and you'd kind of have an espresso and then like wander through and kind of pick out like the things that you want to borrow.
Like a
from them,
museum.
which is just wonderful, but like completely bananas and like very inefficient. So, but fun. My favorite, I think, is probably the movie that I just finished. I'm so excited about, which is it's called Love Me. Well, I mean, who knows what they'll call it when it comes out, but for now it's called Love Me. And it's a love story between a satellite and a smart buoy in the ocean that
That's cool.
meet in a digital space and come together in like a digital apartment that they create together. So that was really just like such a huge challenge, but like had a wonderful team to help pull it all off, and like great directors and DP, just like, so that was, and just making something that was like really
Out there.
weird and yeah. Fun, so, yeah.
That sounds like a good one to see. Hans, how are we for time? Are we?
We are great for time. We've got another 20 minutes or so, Tamara.
Oh, good. Okay. Somebody's asking, Francois, did you work on the Ralph Macchio Karate Kid or the remake with Jaden Smith?
The remake, the remake with the Jaden and Beijing. Yeah, I got the job because I worked a lot in China, so I ended up there because they need somebody who can work in the Chinese side.
Could I ask, like, could you tell us a bit more about working in China and what that's like? That seems like really exciting.
I started working in China on Red Violin, which is 97. So it was all
Fantastic movie.
very different.
Beautiful.
Something.
Love that movie. Yeah.
I work on different projects at Samadai. I work in Hong Kong on a special effect movie. I skipped my mind. And I did a big circus show in Wuhan. And so I've been in China quite a lot. So,
but are you sort of connected with local art director or
yeah.
No, can help.
The few times I've worked there on the circus, I had a crew because it's a very technical stuff. You can just go there and find people who can design for circus. But I've met a team in Hong Kong, and I took them to Shanghai, and after that, we work on a movie in Beijing. Yeah, the same crew. The same crew. Yeah, the same art director, the same set dresser, and no. But if you open, it's great. You have to be open. You have to forget the method. And, even in this Karate Kid was a bigger movie, but it's still China. It's still China. Don't assume too much. It's not.
I have
Sometimes I prefer to this Japan. Japan is so strict. It's so impossible. It's amazing, but it's very, very, very strict. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. But Chinese, they all open. And they're gonna put 600 people for it. I mean, the staff is just mind-boggling. It goes from 50, the next day there's 200. You don't know where they're from. They show up and they disappear, and they live there in the studio soundstage around in the little cabana. No, it's great. Great. I went a few times to the hospital in China too, so I have a lot of experience.
One of my worst, I did a couple of films in India, and I have to say one of my worst experiences was working in India, speaking of, worst, where we had an agreement with, it was Zazu, you reminded me of this with Cuba. We had an agreement with a local museum, and we were in a fortress that was completely empty. It was a fort in a remote part of near Rajasthan, in the middle of nowhere. You had to drive a Jeep to get there. And at the last minute, this museum in the town that was 2 hours away said, no, we're not giving you anything. So we had it empty. It was supposed to be a rich, wealthy family. And it was 3 days before filming. And so they had to fly me to Bombay. And we loaded up, literally, like, the art director, who was from Mumbai, we went to prop houses, the likes of which I've never seen. They were just vast airport hangars full of stuff. Picked the stuff, filled up 3 or 4, 5 trucks, sent them on their way, and did that in a day. And I also had to do casting, because I was the only one from the crew in Mumbai. I had to cast a little girl double, because I knew what the little girl looked like who was in our movie, this little 4-year-old girl. Anyways, it was just the weirdest experience. I'm going to go back to the Q&A. Somebody's asking about transitioning from low budget to, smaller budget productions to larger, bigger shoots. Does anybody want to tackle that? I've kind of done the gamut of both, and I actually, in many ways, find smaller productions to be easier, because you have the same amount of imagination, but you have limited funds. So, Liz, what's your experience, between smaller budgets and bigger budgets, or?
So I actually like the smaller budget stuff, because you have to be it forces you to be more creative. It's not just about throwing money at it, and then we can solve it by throwing more money at it and more time, like, oh, everybody can just work all through the night and make this happen because we'll just throw money at it. No, it's about thinking of new creative ways to change that. And I actually think sometimes they're better solutions than just the throwing money at it solution. So yeah.
John, what do you think? Are you all working pretty much on the same kind of budgets, or do you fluctuate? How do you deal with your crew size and so on when you're doing different size budgets?
I think there's a sort of a level that you can never go below in terms of delivering a product that's going to be acceptable to everybody, including the audience. And I like to hang into that zone. I've done lots of low budget Canadian television in the old days, and I prefer the American television because it has more money, and since that's mainly where I stay, I don't need like hundreds of millions of dollars necessarily, but I do need an amount of money that, can deliver the goods, because there's no, it doesn't matter what show it is you start on, the delivery or the deliverable is going to be about at the same place, right? All the time. They say it's a low budget movie and we're just going to have to be creative, but creativity won't get you what you want in the end. So I try to stick in there. There's love projects that you do for a song and you just kill yourself doing them. That's one thing. That's good too, but also those are often just for your soul. I absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Francois? Do you gravitate towards bigger budget stuff? Have you sort of?
Yeah, I did my share. I did my share of low budget, and I think I'm over.
You earned it.
No, it's just, because the low budget mean to no staff. It's not only the money to pay, but it means no painter. It means no this. And at one point, I carry fridge in my life. I put everything in my truck and my van, But now if somebody asks me, do you know how to drive a truck? I say, no. No, but I think I've done it. I think it's the time for, first of all, younger people.
All right.
Sometimes I get the script and I say, this is story about the young woman having menstruation for the first time. How did you call? Why the fuck you call me?
What is
There's
it
many
called? They should
women who
call
can do
that
this movie.
yes.
There's
take
many people, and sometimes I say, all this person, she or he's gonna be so thrilled, so enthusiastic, he's gonna be ready. He's gonna give you more than me. I'm gonna bitch for like 2 months.
What about
Right?
you, Sazio? How does budget figure into your creativity? Are you making
it does.
choices where
Yeah.
you're trying to get bigger budget stuff? Because I know you've done a lot of indie stuff and
Well, I mean, I think so. I have lots of feelings about this. I mean, for me, I sort of have over the course of the last 10 years kind of, like continually kind of been challenging myself and doing like slightly bigger projects. I'm obviously in an earlier part of my career than some of my esteemed colleagues that are with us. But I also have my limits for sure. But I think it would be, especially for some people that might be listening that are starting out and are kind of close to my end of the career spectrum. Like I think I've done a movie that was probably, I don't know, the production budget was probably like, for the whole movie, it was probably $100,000. It was a very, very, very low budget. And then, moved up from there to now I'm kind of like in the 15 million range. And like, there's, lots of good stuff and lots of bad stuff in all of those areas. Right. And like, I think, I actually, the 100 million or the $100,000 movie, I love it. I cherish it. I love it. It's called MM. Drew Lint is the director. It's lovely to see it. But I think there, and I think that's the thing. It's like I'm not sure if the question was originally like, is it about moving through that, like getting
just generally how budget affects your creativity, I think, on a film.
I mean, it definitely does. Obviously, I think it's always just having a budget that's appropriate for what is trying to be executed is like so important. I think as far as like, when those things don't line up, then it's, there's sort of, part of it is the creative solutions and then part of it is the practical solutions. Okay, what is actually going to have impact here? Which, like, where can we put money where it's actually like, what's actually important here, and what is volume or what is sort of going to fade? Like, what can we stand to lose to make sure that we do at least like the main thing really, really, really well. So that's usually, I think the other thing that tends to come in is about what John was talking about off the top, like combining locations and trying to figure out how to like find creative solutions where the art department can kind of solve some of those problems to make the overall budget more manageable or the day more workable, or which sometimes means like Night Raiders, there was a lot of situations where like we couldn't that was such a plagued production. It's such a great film, and Dan Scalé is the director, and I love it. But there was like, we initially were sort of had started production in Winnipeg and scouted there, and like we're prepping for like a month, and then it went down there, and we ended up shooting it here in Hamilton, generally in this area, a few months later, and then finding locations for that, and that kept kind of, the plug kept getting pulled on all the locations because Star Trek and other big productions would come in and sort of like take the locations that we had
right, with their big money.
With money. So that's sort of a major problem, where we just needed to kind of like roll with the punches and try to continue to like deliver, to service the story and deliver the best thing we could, with that all in mind, and try and like keep your eyes open, like for where there is sort of production value that you can use as a starting point in locations, and and yeah, and then just be building on those.
Mhm. Okay, I'm gonna ask just a random question. If you could design any film from the beginning of film history, what would it be? John, any film?
Ones I wish I would have done.
Yeah, ones that you wish you had a chance to do, even if
Well,
they were before your
I
time.
think Dune was incredible. I think every sort of visual in that movie just blew me away. I wish I would have done that.
Yeah, that's a good one. What about you, Francois? Any movie, anytime?
It's one of the movie I saw it, and it's one of the movie I decided to work on. The movie was Dead in Venice,
Ah, right.
and I know
Everybody's got to see that.
Visconti was crazy. He was. Have you heard about this? The story of Visconti, that he didn't like the floor; they had to rip it. Every cupboard, every closet, every drawer had to be full. Period. Everything.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so amazing.
Yeah. Truly
It's
beautiful.
so it's just amazing. The music, obviously, but it's so.
Yeah.
I was I don't know 18 years old when I saw this movie, and I was
That was it.
Piero Tusi, and I was mind boggling.
Yeah.
I mean-
Yeah. What about you, Liz?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess the first thing that came to my mind was Parasite, because I thought that was
That's funny. I was thinking that one too.
that was just so incredible, and I just love to know how everything went, and it was beautiful. I love
Yeah.
architecture. And
Yeah.
Zazie, what about you?
I mean, I'm sure there's probably like more things that I'll think of as soon as this call ends, but the one that popped into my head first is The Hours,
Yeah.
Oh,
which
Mhm.
and what I like about that film in particular, why I think it would have been great to design, is just because it's there's sort of three stories that are woven together, and each of them takes place in a different time period. There's sort of this like Virginia Woolf, like Bloomsbury Group sort of arts and crafts, which I just like totally love that kind of 1920s England kind of situation. And then like a 1950s Los Angeles bit with Julianne Moore, and then there's the contemporary New York part, and they all kind of connect to each other. And yeah, I just have always loved that. And it was one of the ones that made me be like, oh yeah, production design is pretty great.
mhm.
And
Wow.
any movie by Dante Ferretti,
Yeah.
Baron Munchausen, I think it's one of the greatest.
that's fun. That's a fun
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? Oh, Astorberger has a question about the DGC is committed to climate action by making sustainable filmmaking. I think this is a good sort of thing to think about and talk about. As production designers, what steps are you taking to add sustainability when designing your sets? Interesting. Any thoughts? John, Liz?
I have some thoughts about it, because I know that I did a lot of recycling for Critch. I took walls out of old factories, like the old paneling. I took carpets out of people's homes. I took kitchens out of people's homes. So I did a lot of recycling for some of the, just to get that era, but also it just happened to be the best way to do it and to get that material, because it's not so available. But anyway, that was
Mhm.
my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, I personally we kept some sets on Nightmare Alley, and then I did another series with Guillermo and Miles Dale. It was an anthology series, and there's one set that we kept, which was the Burning Shack. I don't know if any of you have seen it, where it burns down. It didn't really burn down, and we kept it, and we used it 3 other times in the course of this 8-part anthology series, and you would never know. One was a 70s apartment, one was period apartment with a ceiling, you know, like just every time I use it, and the plaster and paint got thicker and thicker, and it got even more delicious. So that was my one. Finally, we threw it out because it was going to hurt somebody by collapsing. John, have you got any thoughts about sustainability? And
Well, we try our best. Like I said, we're paperless. We try to recycle everything that we build within this period of the show. My construction coordinator tends to hold on to some of the windows because the Western will come around again, and the windows in that great reformed glass or restoration glasses in them. Doors, the same thing. We try to hang on to that. Anything that is just building material will go to Habitat for Humanity.
that's great.
You know, somebody told me a story a long time ago about, you know, when you go to the pearly gates and you meet St. Peter, the first thing he says is, come over here, and he walks you over to your pile of shit that you made, the stuff you left behind, the debris, the waste, and says, take care of that, and then you can come in. And I keep that in mind when we're out there deciding, are we going to use spray foam? Are we going to, how, you know, exactly what is the environmental impact of this approach?
Yeah.
And everybody's willing to play along with that. And it's not that hard to do, really, just to be conscious.
Yeah, yeah, in every way. I mean, I think reusing and giving set, like we'll often give flats to smaller productions.
Yeah.
The best we can, and sometimes choosing not to build a set. You know, if you can do that. Sometimes it's more expensive not to build a set and to go on a location. So, any other questions? I kind of. Oh, here's an interesting question. Do you feel it is pivotal for the production designer to be a strong draftsperson, or at least have a history of set design and drafting? What do you think, Zazu? Do you?
I mean,
Do you think that's important?
I'm a mediocre drafts person at best. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, I can use SketchUp. I can draft my own stuff in a pinch, and I do when I'm working on commercials. I also do graphic design. So I think it is important, and I think it's you know, you kind of need to have. For me, it was like doing, you know, trying to work in all of those roles, as many roles as I could. Before I started production designing, I've worked in set deck, I've done art department coordinating, I've art directed, I've, you know, done graphics, I've done drafting, and yeah, it's sort of all, you kind of, for me, it's really helpful to be able to communicate quickly, and yeah.
What about you, John? Do you draft? Have you done your own drafting?
I know how to do it all. I do not do it. You know, I've come from, you know, I've designed entire shows on bar napkins in my earlier days, and drafting tables when I had them. And I think we drew our first show on computer in 1988, which was a Commodore 64, which was crazy. But
That's insane, man.
I know how to do it, but
Yeah.
I am so about finding somebody better than me and bringing them into the fold and having them take over that, and just, you know, it has worked out just quite nicely.
Yeah.
And
Francois,
for like I agree with that, and just with renderings and stuff like that as well. Like the set designers in the DGC are so incredible with rendering, and yeah,
amazing.
That knocks my
We have
socks.
amazing people. Francois, I know you like to do your own renders. That's part of your process. Do you still draft? Do you actually like? I remember you drafting. I was like, oh God, I got to learn how to draft. There it is.
Yeah, that's my, you know, I'm this is my own thing. Me too. I found I would never get the skill of the people I'm working with. It would take me, even I have a son who's 30. He's he's amazing, 3D printing and 3D thing and SketchUp, and not even SketchUp. For him, SketchUp is too low. But nobody's manipulating program, and so there's always kid or other people who's gonna be. There's better illustration than me. There's better draftman than me. So I do my own thing, and it's after that it's communicating your concept to people who can put it together, and after
Yeah.
that.
What about you, Liz?
And then the same, I have to say, the director they need so much proof.
Yeah,
They can.
this is true. Director and
3D
producers.
with the shadow, with the water reflection, what it is. It's in
What
theater
about
you
you,
don't
Liz?
have this problem. In
Yeah,
theater,
yeah,
it's still
yeah. Do you draft, Liz? Do you draw? Do you?
Yeah, I learned it at theater school, and that was by hand.
Yeah.
at the time.
Oh, so you're older than you look.
Am I? Oh dear.
No,
I should have said that then.
No, it was all hand drafting at Ryerson also. There's like no
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah.
It's all, yeah.
It's a tool.
It's good.
Yeah, but I was really thrilled to know to work in SketchUp, because it's like, oh my gosh, so much faster. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was I like the luxury of having a concept artist. This is the first time I've had one on this show, and it's so fun to have somebody there to work with you on stuff. Like, it's just so great. It's
Yeah,
lovely.
no,
Yeah.
and we do have such good people in Canada.
Yeah.
All from coast to coast. Okay, I think that's we're wrapping up, right, Hans? Help me here.
And it's late in Nova Scotia.
It's really, gosh, it's past my
It's 10
bedtime.
o'clock.
I know, right?
It's bedtime.
I could talk to you guys each individually or as a group for hours. I think we just got started, man. I think
You bet.
we have to do more of this. That's
Well, I
fun.
think
What a
we-
mix. What a mixed
fun.
bag.
I think we absolutely will do more of this, and thank you so much, Tamara, and thanks to all of you. Such a privilege and a pleasure to have you all together, and the breadth of experience that you collectively bring in this moment in time is absolutely remarkable. This has been recorded. This will be once we can sort out all the tech. It takes a little bit of time, but it will be put out onto our DGC National YouTube channel.
I thought you were going to say it will be used against you in a court
It
of
will
law.
not- That's right. No, it will be used for you. This has been so amazing. Yeah, so it will be out there on the DGC National YouTube channel for anybody that wasn't here to be able to enjoy this conversation. Thank you so very much. This has been wonderful and generous and enlightening. Marion?
Yes. Thank you so much, Tamara and Zazu, John, Francois, Liz. It's been fantastic hearing you share your ideas and experiences. And we will continue. There'll be more all art conversations. So if any of you or any of the people attending have ideas of specific topics you want to discuss, we've got 2 more this year to do. So fire me an email or put it in the chat or something like that, because we definitely want to keep on this conversation. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you so
Well,
much,
thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, guys. Take
Been a
care,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Tamara. It's been a
Bye.
long
So
time,
nice to
right?
see all of you.
It's been a long time, Tamara.
Too long. Too
Oh,
long.
bye.
Next time in Montreal.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you guys too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.